Sorry it's been a few days since I've gotten back to you. We have been doing some work in the garden as far as some planting and things like that go, and I'll show you some of that. But I thought what I'd talk to you today about is really dealing with weather conditions. Specifically, we've got a cold front coming in this weekend. It's going to be down in the upper 30s here in South Carolina. It's going to be down in the upper 20s in Virginia. So we're all dealing with what do we do with our newly planted vegetables and that sort of thing. So what I've got is I've got a few ways of dealing with some of that, and then some other ways of dealing with some other conditions that you may encounter and such. So I hope you enjoy it today. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comment section or so of the YouTube. And then, be pleased if you'd like the video, and then also if you'd subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy it. Like I said, what we've got this weekend is we've got some cold weather coming through. And one way I combat some of the problems with cold weather is I have some tomatoes here that are newly planted, and I've got little milk jugs over them. And what I have is I've cut the bottom out of the milk jug, and then I've taken the top off so that it don't get too hot. And then we've got them placed on top of them in the garden, so that you can see how it provides a little miniature greenhouse to keep your freshly planted plants from getting frost nipped. Usually if it gets down into the lower or mid to low 30s, we're going to get frost around here. Upper 30s, maybe some frost if there's no wind, but we don't want to take any chances with tender plants like tomatoes. So that's what we've got for our tomatoes. Some other things we have, I do have what we call a cold frame, and in the cold frame I've got some seedlings that I planted. I'm actually trying to harden these off, so I've got them in the cold frame. I'll open it up during the day, but I'll close it down at night. Opening it up during the day keeps it from getting too hot, and closing it down at the night retains that heat so that you can keep the plant in there. But what it also does is it helps harden off those seedlings so that they can make it through that tough time. I've got two more other frames. These are portable, and what I've done is I've built this little frame, and I can just move it on top of a bed as I need to, and I might do that this weekend too. In addition to cold, what happens sometimes with newly planted seedlings is that we get too much sun. What we have here is we have some Chinese cabbage, and I made this frame years ago for our hops when I first planted the hops, because hops are typically cool climate plants, and I was afraid that the heat would be so much that the roots would get too hot and it just wouldn't do well. So I made this frame, and the hops have established themselves very well, so now I'm using the frame around the garden to provide some shade. You can also use shade cloths and hoops, like a PVC hoop or whatever, as a shade mechanism for your garden also. But there are lots of ways to combat the shade. One problem that we do have is that we have a little bit too much shade. So in our garden, what I've got to do is I've got to maximize the sunlight by growing vertically. So you can see here that I have peas with the A-frame above the peas, and they're going to be climbing up this to reach as much sunlight as they can. My blueberries have they've got berries on them that have developed fully, and they're really bending over. And what I've got is I've got such loose soil that it tends to bend the blueberries over. So what I've done is I've staked these with some rebar, and the rebar is I've got it wire tied to the blueberry, and that way the blueberry is going to stay upright. I do the same thing with the asparagus, because the asparagus is growing so well that it's really grown beyond. So with the asparagus, you can see that we've definitely grown up. We do the same thing with tomatoes, and that's essentially what tomato cages are for, is to allow us for some vertical growth. Here you can see the tomatoes already growing up through the cage, and we train it to go ahead and stay inside the cage. In addition to sunlight and the cold, we also have water to deal with, and in this case we have too much water. This is a garden plot over at the farm, and we've got water where it's accumulated in the bottom, and this is our beans, and it'll actually drown out the beans if we don't watch out. So I need to go over there and rough up that soil a little bit, get some more air down to those roots and such. So I'm going to be doing that tomorrow probably. Don't know where my corn is. We'll see how it goes as time goes on. I may have to replant the corn if it didn't make, so we'll see how that goes. One thing that we do also have to deal with water is drought, and we do have some watering techniques as far as rainwater collection, and then putting in a drip system and that sort of thing. And I'll show you that in a separate video. I think irrigation is something that warrants a video by itself, so I hope you'll enjoy that. In the garden there is a lot going on. We do have the spinach, which is starting to bolt and then go ahead and flower so we can have seed on that, and the potatoes are doing real well this time of year, so look forward to seeing all those things develop. So y'all go ahead and keep those tender seedlings warm, and make sure you watch out for these days when we have 3 inches of rainfall in one day, and have a great gardening season. I hope you've got everything in the ground and going. Let us know if you have any questions. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.